Alright, so back again. This one's going to be focusing on an issue that obviously a lot of the Western world has become very, very familiar and equally frustrated with. The issue of immigration and how all these characters from PvP server countries have invaded Western lands. They've overtaken the Shire. They have decimated all that we hold to be good and noble and right and creative and innovative. Western culture, Christian culture, all of these things that we hold dear. These globalist, libtard, communist, socialist, nihilist people have decided to go and say, no, we don't want that kind of world. We want a world run and fueled by chaos. We don't like patriarchy. We don't like white supremacy. We don't like colonialism. Ugh, those things are disgusting. We loathe those things. No, we would much rather like squalor and living in filth and living with all these weird pagan practices, all these PDF file practices from the Islamists and all these crazy backwater country policies, and it's just, that's what we want instead. So anyway, it looks like the US has come out, the State Department has come out with a whole bunch of interesting tweets, which we're going to get into today. I've been following this guy for quite a while as well, Ali Tabrizi. He's quite a good based, level-headed guy, and he says many things that I agree with. But without further ado, let us get into it.
All right, so this post is going absolutely nuclear on X, where it's gone over 7 million views in less than 24 hours. It's from the State Department, where basically Marco Rubio's team have just called out the entire UN for basically facilitating cultural and ethnic genocide of Western countries, of Europe, through mass migration. And the details that they go into here, I didn't even know some of this stuff. And this is super important that you understand this, because this could be steering the direction that the world is going into a better place. We could be healing from something, which we talk about a lot on the show. So let's read this thread, and then we're going to watch a video from Mark.
And I mean, again, if you have just, if you spent any amount of time doom scrolling X, just looking at these things, you know what, you get honestly inundated with the amount of crazy videos of just migrants beating the crap out of native citizens in the UK, in Europe, in America even. You just get inundated with this stuff. The grooming gangs, the general violence of these people. And you know, the globalist agenda is clearly the replacement of Western civilization. It is communism, like in its ultimate form. Like, if communism is Goku from Dragon Ball Z, like this globalist agenda is when Goku becomes Super Saiyan. It's like it takes it to that next level, the ultimate form, the pinnacle of the diabolical agenda that they have is fundamentally, and the ultimate form is the replacement of Western civilization. The thing is, what always trips me up is to what end? Their end is destruction. This is why it is of the devil. They clearly want the destruction of everything good, because the greatest evil to evil would be good. So anything that's good, anything that's creative, anything that strives toward the good, they loathe it, because they are of their father, the Satan.
Marco Rubio. So, last week, the United States refused to participate in the UN's review of the Global Compact on Migration. The United States objects to the Global Compact on Migration and UN efforts to facilitate replacement migration. They used the word replacement migration to the United States and
And everybody would continually use this phrase, oh, replacement migration, the great migration theory. Oh, it's just a theory, made up and concocted in the minds of the alt-right and people who are, so white and so patriarchal and so pro-capitalism, and they're so backwards. That's such a narrow way of looking at it. Those people are so disgusting. Yet you can see it happening in real life. You can see it happening, how they've completely decimated Christian. Well, we can make an argument that the atheists had quite a good shake at decimating Christian lands, but for the most part, the atheists, in Western civilization, they just they enjoyed the trappings of what Christianity brought them. It's a lot more tolerant, shall we say, than, Islam, for instance. Yet, these globalists, they love the fact, and are okay with the fact, that there's grooming gangs running amok in their streets. They're okay with the fact that that these immigrants are beating the crap out of natives. They're okay with that, because of course, that's all part of the agenda. The crazy thing for me is really just these average Joe libtards, these average Joe communist socialists. Their ignorance is one thing, because obviously they don't know anything about politics. They know nothing about these things because they couldn't be bothered with it. But the second thing is the fact that they so willingly can turn off what is happening in front of their eyes, because what's happening in front of their eyes runs diametrically opposed with their programming that they've been fed through mainstream media, through CBS, through MSNBC, through BBC, through all of these woke news networks. And it's staggering to see that they are just incapable of coming to a logical conclusion that no, these policies are shit. These ideas are not working. They're making my life immeasurably worse. And they'll go so far as to even go ahead and bring some of these foreign crazy deranged lunatics into their households. You can just go Google and you'll see videos about how these Western people, once again mostly women, crazy, they'll allow these immigrants to come into their homes, and then they'll get staggered about how they treat them like crap. They'll get staggered about how these immigrants steal stuff, and how these immigrants actually take over their whole house and change the locks, lock them out of their own house, and there's literally nothing that these native-born Europeans, English people, can do about it. And in fact, they'll even be okay with it. Absolutely insane.
Our Western allies, aka the UK, France, Germany, Spain, Norway, all of these European countries are absolutely falling to mass migration from Islamic countries.
Yep.
Marseille in France is already 30% Muslim. Paris is 15% Muslim. London's like 20% Muslim. Sweden is expected to be fully 30% Muslim in the next 20 years.
50%.
This is the state all across the European Union. UN agencies, get this, systematically facilitated mass migration into America and Europe, even as citizens of these nations called for restrictions on migration. That's the thing. No one voted for this. UN agencies, exactly working with the NGOs they fund, established a migration corridor through Central America to the US border. As the American people suffered under an unprecedented wave of mass migration, we have to remember what this means is all the sexual violence, the crimes, the narco trafficking, the stealing of jobs, undercutting labor and wages, real consequences, right? The UN was on the ground.
And also, if you think about it, why would the globalists want this? Specifically with the job thing. If you have to think about it, that most white people are and have just higher IQ levels. That means that they're allowed to get more specialized kind of jobs. They can grasp complex systems and understand complex problems and come up with innovative, creative solutions. the thing is, that sounds great to normal people like you and me. The problem is for globalists, for elitists, specifically on the left side of the aisle, the commie socialist side of the aisle, those are considered terrible things for them. Why? Well, that means that those kind of people with a very specific, very sophisticated skill set and a keen mind for recognizing patterns, that means that you have to pay those people a considerable amount more than you would a person that's of low IQ, a person that is not very intelligent, a person that can't really solve complex problems. So you could go ahead and you could implement a whole system of fraud where you can basically, as the government, as the leftist socialist government, you can steal all the money, because of course you're in the government, you can do what you want, I suppose, at that point. You can steal all the money, and you don't need necessarily complicated solutions to get solved, because you would have in effect separated yourself from the PvP server immigrants that you've roped into your country, who've destroyed your native population. Of course, because they, your native population, the white people, the Europeans, the UK people, of course, they cost too much money. They're too expensive. And also because of their pattern recognition, they're onto us all the time regarding all the diabolical things that we do. I would rather have, therefore, if I were a leftist, socialist, commie, Marxist, I would rather have people that are fundamentally stupid so that they can't catch on to me, because they've got poor pattern recognition, so they don't understand what's going on. And also, I'll go ahead and use social media and mainstream media to go ahead and say all the people that do have pattern recognition, all the people that are starting to catch on to me, oh, they're just conspiracy theorists, they're tinfoil hat wearers, they're just nut jobs. It's not really happening. Don't really believe what's going on right in front of your eyes, people. Don't be silly.
Lining migrants into the southern border. This is remarkable that the Department of the State is actually saying what is really going on. This is no longer a conspiracy, right? We've been calling this out for years, being called far-right conspiracy theorists, and now the State Department is talking about this. UN officials greeted migrants along the route through the deadly Darien Gap. UN-funded NGOs handed out maps to migrants en route to the US. After facilitating mass migration to the United States, UN agencies condemned the deportation of illegal migrants. It's as if the UN thinks that it controls the world. The United States, that it controls the borders, right? This is the UN who make out that they're all for democracy and power to the people, right? Whatever happened to that? The Americans didn't vote for this. Like, the UN are absolute tyrants. They don't give a care in the world about actual democracy, actual rights of citizens, because
and that's the thing. This is, again, it's this, I foresee it going this way. The UN, the WEF, all these globalist organizations, fundamentally what they want to do is they want to rewrite and destroy the concept of presidents of countries. They fundamentally want to be the overseers, the global dictators, where they live in some, secluded facility where they all just congregate and they just rule the world from said facility. It would be in some, probably very fancy place on Earth where the grass is always green and, there's grapes and wine all over the place, and they just, have their weird little orgies that they do and all sorts of stuff. The same as really what they do in the WEF and all those insane things that they do there. And that fundamentally just rule the world from that place. Because obviously the rest of the world then would just be a PvP server globe. It would just be full of these crazy backwards people. And they would effectively be the slaves, and the globalist elites, they would basically be the masters, and they would have nothing to do with anything that's going on. And they've already probably got all the money that they need anyway. But yeah, even then, it's crazy because, yeah, I mean, The brain can't fathom that. But of course, that doesn't really matter because all the people that do have brains, like you and I, would be long gone by then. So I think it's a really shit idea.
The moment those citizens don't want anything that the UN is trying to force down your throat, they'll just go and find a way to do it for you anyway. Absolute tyrants that were never voted in. They're just super inflated cash payments that all these people are getting tax-free, huge wages when you work for the UN, right? All these privileges, diplomatic immunity. These people get away with the highest rates of sexual abuse of any organization on earth.
Yeah.
Right? The United Nations, in just the span of 10 years, their staff members committed at least 60,000 rapes. Those are just the ones they admit to.
And I just talked about the orgies and stuff like that. You know, I just talked about that in the WF. I mean, yeah, these people, these globalist elites, they're filthy people. Absolute animals. I haven't even watched this before, and yeah, he pointed out exactly. These people are, yeah, absolutely despicable, filthy swines.
Right? It's far higher than that. Like, more children are sexually abused at the hands of UN peacekeepers and staff members than like any other organization on earth. I've done a whole other video talking about this. You might want to check out my interview with...
And interestingly, that's probably why they like the Islamists. Because it is known in Islam, they call them the Bucky boys. You can go ahead and Google that. I think it's BACHI boys. And yeah, they're literally, you know, they use these boys, you know, let's just say, you know, Islam is full of Epsteins. Let's just go ahead and leave it at that.
A UN whistleblower. So, as Europe endured sustained migratory pressure, UN officials staffed all ends of the Mediterranean migration route, from the coast of Libya to the shores of the Aegean to the islands of Greece. The UN agencies, condemned frontline states who refused to open their borders, right? Human rights, human rights, human rights.
Yeah.
Nonsense. While the United Kingdom faced unprecedented illegal boat crossings, UN agencies condemned plans for deportation. Unbelievable.
But of course they would.
And everyone still loves the UN and acts as if it's like the greatest organization on earth. UN officials lobbied aviation regulators to prevent the deportation of migrants. It would be a human rights abuse to send them back to the place where they've just come from. An appalling violation of the UK's national sovereignty. Absolutely. The Global Compact on Migration claims to support safe migration. For the citizens of Western nations, mass migration was never safe.
Facts.
It introduced new security threats, imposed financial strains, and undermined the
And also on that point, whenever there was migration back in the day, there was never the idea of mass migration, first of all, and most of the migration that did happen was between other Western civilizations, other Western countries, going to other Western countries. Because they knew that, well, chances are they're probably going to assimilate very quickly because they've got the same ideology as us. They're going to be able to find jobs really simple. They're going to be able to speak our language, so that's not going to be a problem. Their cultures and their customs are fundamentally exactly like us. So we're not going to have any problems with these people. This crazy globalist migration is comparable to the Middle Ages invasions of the Islamists on Christian lands.
Cohesion of our societies. Exactly. Western cities now, all across Europe, are just a mosh pit for pro-Palestine agitators, for pro-Islamic regime agitators, for the kind of swarming of our streets by these Islamist grooming gangs who are after young meat, young white Western girls.
Yeah,
right? These nations are no longer safe. The stabbings, the arson attacks on churches, right? It's all being facilitated by the United Nations. It's no longer a conspiracy. It's out in the open now.
Yeah, you can use your eyes.
The United States will not legitimize global compacts that enable mass migration into America or Western nations. Under President Trump, the State Department will facilitate remigration, not replacement migration. So check out this video from Marco Rubio, because I think he hits the nail on the head. I've said this for a long time now, that I think Marco Rubio is the single greatest politician in the Western world. I hope he becomes president of the US one day.
Yeah,
I really want him to be the next president of the United States. Marco Rubio has his head screwed on better than anyone else in Western politics at that level. All right, let's watch this.
It's long been described as the Western Alliance, right? What is it? And it's not just me saying, you go to these NATO meetings, you meet with people, what they will tell you is our shared history, our shared legacy, our shared values, our shared priorities. That's what they talk about as the reason for this alliance. Well, if you erase your shared history, your shared culture, your shared ideology, your shared priorities, your shared principles, then you just have a straight up defense agreement. That's all you have. So what I'm trying to point to, and what we've tried to point to, is very simple. That is, at the bedrock and at the cornerstone of our relationship, with example with Europe, is the fact that we do have a shared culture, a shared civilization, a shared experience, and shared values and principles on things like human rights, on freedom, on liberty, on democracy, on all sorts of on the rights of the individual, on all these sorts of things that we in this nation are the inheritors of in many cases, because many of these ideas that led to the founding of our country found their genesis
came from there
in some of these places.
Agreed.
In the Western Alliance. If you take that away, if that's wiped out because for whatever reason it's no longer a priority, I do think it puts a strain and threatens the alliance in the long term and in the big picture. Now, whatever internal politics causes people to dispute this, I'm not going to comment on, other than to tell you that I do think that at the core of these special relationships we have is the fact that we have shared history, shared values, shared civilizational principles that we should be unapologetic about. This is a nation that was founded on Western principles. Founded on Western principles like liberty, the value of and the right of the individual, the right of self-governance. These are all Western values. Now, others may have adopted it in different parts of the world, but they emanate from Western history. And it's something that we should be apologetic about. Why would we be apologetic about it? Anyone who doesn't recognize, for example, that many of the features of our system of government find their root in Roman and Greek history is a fool.
True.
Is a fool. It's just not true. And so I think that we need to understand and embrace that, not negate it. And I think that's what we're pointing to here, is that we are concerned that particularly in parts of Western Europe, those things that underpin our alliance and our tie to them could be under threat in the long term. And by the way, there are leaders in those countries that recognize that as well. Some say it openly, some say it privately. In the eastern and southern part of Europe, they're much more open about it. Nonetheless, it is a factor that needs to be addressed.
I love how unapologetic he is. Like, absolutely. Like, it's about time that Westerners stopped wringing their hands and just being so apologetic for who they are. Don't you understand that wherever the influence of this particular culture departs, all that floods in is barbarism?
And also on that, like, I mean, he's exactly right. You look at the amount of white guilt that Westerners, or shall I say more the socialist, communist, Marxist type of Westerners, because, the people on the right, I would like to think are either waking up or have woken up. But you've got this idea that because of this white guilt, we've been forced by social media, by mainstream media, by them, who are also, funnily enough, a lot of white people, into thinking that, we've got so much to apologize for. We've got so much to, give reparations for. We've been such bad people in the past. If you had a look at just the amount of innovation, creativity, humanitarian things that we have done throughout the decades, throughout the centuries, we've got exactly nothing to apologize for. In my estimation, the world should be thanking white people for what we've done to, humanity. The amount of stuff that we've created, the amount of stuff that we've just helped out, it's staggering that it gets thrown in our faces. And we need to adopt a backwards way of thinking. And it gets sold to us as this backwards way of thinking, it is progress. It's ridiculous.
Barbarism, child grooming gangs, cousin marriage, inbreeding, terrorism, jihad.
It's sick.
Like, things that don't work, trash everywhere, in the rivers, on the streets, like the breakdown of society, tyrannical governments. Like, at what point did the West give up on itself? right? And start to be ashamed of itself. It's because of the infiltration of this radical leftist lunacy, which the United Nations has been completely captured by. So what the State Department has just put out.
And it's just because, just because the globalists have infiltrated all these organizations and are now dictating to us that we need to change. Why should we change when we know our system works better? Why should we change to a system that we can see with our eyes causes nothing but chaos and murder and just all around deplorableness and just backwards thinking and backwards results? Why should we adopt that? Like, there's no reason to. You would only change a system if the new system you can logically see is far superior. This is why sometimes I get lost even thinking about what must be going on in these people's brains. Because there's no outcome. There's no result. There's no conceivable idea where this is going to end well. But fundamentally, that's what they want. And well, I just think they're going to meet with resistance. And not diplomatic resistance.
Maybe one of the greatest turning points in Western history, in modern Western history, because it's saying that we're no longer going to go down this path that is leading us to self-destruction.
Yeah.
Because what we need to remember here, right, is if Europe falls to Islamism or whatever it might be, it's going to be Islamism.
Yeah.
You have Western European countries that have nuclear weapons, nuclear submarines, right? We have all the technology and the resources there.
That's right.
Right? If that is taken over by Islamic governments who are supported by Islamic populations, you've just emboldened the Middle East. Because now...
Yeah, I know. Just think about that. Because, I mean, okay, so, Trump was able to squash the whole idea of Iran having a nuclear weapon. But then, I suppose, this is quite plausible. If the UK becomes a predominantly Muslim nation and they adopt Sharia law, Iran doesn't need to have a nuclear weapon because, well, hello, they've got the UK, which happens to be under Sharia law. Great, they've already got a nuclear weapon. They've already got, well, yeah, I know the UK Navy isn't looking so hot, not the way it used to. But yeah, I mean, fundamentally, you can just circumvent the fact that Iran doesn't or can't possess a nuclear weapon because it's okay, because now we rule the UK, and it just so happens the UK's got a nuclear weapon. Fantastic. Man, it's crazy. Yeah, no, this needs to stop. This needs to stop ASAP.
That's part of their territory. And then if there is ever a war, America is dealing with China on one side, and it's lost all of its European allies, and it weakens America as well. So we need to be thinking about this. We need to be thinking long term. We need to be thinking in terms of war. We need to be thinking in terms of these worst case scenarios.
Well,
because what we have is just these like Western liberal suicidal empathy like feminists.
Yep.
Who are so focused on their own little microaggressions and how they can like be more of an ally to some stupid cause.
How can I be offended today?
Self-destructing. They are self-destructing. And what's happening is the rest of the world is like, well, we'll just move in. Thankfully, Marco Rubio has his head screwed on tight.
Yeah, I know.
Thankfully, largely I've seen from the Trump administration a lot of good things. Not all great. But when it comes to Marco Rubio, I think this guy is brilliant. So anyway, I just thought that needed to be shared with you because this is a really important moment for the US, for the State Department to put this out. And actually calling it replacement migration shows as well that this is not a big conspiracy. The entire time people have been talking about this, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist, there is no great replacement theory. No, like it's just happening. It just is happening.
I can use my eyes.
I can see birth rates, the abortions,
out my eyeballs.
The falling away from the church as well.
Yeah,
people have lost their minds and tried to come up with their own rules for how to govern society, and all we've done is destroyed it in like one generation.
Yep.
So anyway, give this video a thumbs up, comment down below, hype it, subscribe to the show if you haven't already, and I'll speak to you in the next one. God bless.
Nice. Yeah. And I think fundamentally this also comes down to the fact that, for too long, Christianity has also been infiltrated. Christianity has been infiltrated for a long, long time with this. It was woke before any other institution became woke. And I think that's one of the big problems. One of the huge problems. And that was kind of the one domino that fell, leading to the rest of the dominoes falling. It's because Christianity lost its medieval spine. And, of course, when Christianity loses its spine and there's a vacuum, something needs to fill it. Some new, stronger ideology needs to fill it. And, sorry, but atheism is not robust enough to fill that hole. There needs to be something more ancient, more sturdy than Christianity. And unfortunately, Islam is definitely not sturdy, definitely not more morally superior, definitely not anything close to Christianity. But it does have, shall I say, more structure than wokeism. And so obviously that will end up taking Christianity's place unless something happens. And again, I think enough people are starting to wake up now that something will need to happen, but that's a discussion that not many people want to address, because there is fundamentally only one way to actually sort this out, and it's not with diplomacy, it's with that other thing. But until next time, that's pretty much all I got to say. We will check you on the next one. Cheers.